Good morning, everybody. My name is Ed Gow Jr. I am the representative of Dad Central, their steering committee in Ontario. And do note, Dad Central is Canada's national fatherhood organization. And I am paraphrasing, I am jacked to be part of this webinar today, that we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of education, a lot of knowledge, and just a good time. So today, we are having a webinar, and the title of the webinar is The Positive Impact of Sports on Father-Child Relationships. And we have two very, very special guests today who are sharing their stories, their fun, their laughter, and some challenges when it comes to doing the father thing. Also want to give a big shout out to Dove Men Care, who made this happen along with Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. Well, let me introduce our first guest. And if you don't know him, you're going to get to know him. Jack Armstrong, for those who are Raptors fans, those who are NBA fans, hey, who doesn't know this guy? So we're very blessed to have him today. So Jack, welcome. How are you this morning?
Great. It's such a thrill to be on with you and Donovan. And just want to say thank you to our good friends at Dove and obviously Dad Central as well. This is an honor to be part of this. This is a special topic. Near and dear to Donovan's heart, my heart, your heart, Ed, and to our good friends at Dove as well. So just thrilled to be part of it and excited to be here this morning.
Excellent. We're very happy to have you because I know your schedule is really, really tight. So thanks for making the time in your positive, productive, personal, and business schedule for us today. It's appreciated. Next up, no problem. Next up, we have Donovan Bennett. And when we were doing our pre-meeting yesterday, we were saying, what shirt's Donovan going to wear? Because Donovan, he's got the fashion thing down. And I did not plan it to match up with him this morning. So we're sort of color coordinated in a number of different ways. But Donovan Bennett from Sportnet, no stranger to Dad Central, a great supporter, great father. Donovan, good morning, and thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. Great minds think alike.
There you go.
Listen, I will have to give a couple qualifiers. One, if you hear some loud noise in the background, that is the child that we're reaching nap time. So there might be a negotiation on whether or not naps happen in the background. So if you hear that, that's one. Two, you said positive role model in terms of parenting. I'm not sure my son would agree with you and how positive it's been. So we'll roll with it. When questions are thrown my way, I'm just gonna say the creed that I live by, WWJD. What would Jack do? Right? What would Jack do in this situation? And that's gonna be my answer. So I'm excited to be a part of the conversation.
Jeez. We got to put that in the script next time. What would Jack do? WWJD. That's fabulous. I mean, so folks, we're going to have a good time. In this first, the laughter, we're certainly going to get them sharing some of their perspectives in fatherhood. And also, too, if you have any questions, comments in the chat, please put them in the chat. We probably won't get a lot to the questions, but certainly the comments will be responded by Drew Solon, who is the director of Dad Central Ontario. He's watching things on the back end. So let's get at it, gentlemen. So first off, let's find out from both of you, how did sports play a positive role in your family's lives, past and present? Jack, go ahead, please.
Well, I married a coach. My wife was a former Division I women's soccer coach, NCAA Division I, and she was also the women's basketball assistant at Niagara University, where I used to coach. So to be in a house with two Division I head coaches, it was an interesting experience for our kids, I would say. But nonetheless, I think a great opportunity from our experiences, coaching and motivating and mentoring kids. And then also being able to deal with parents and see how they raise their kids and the interactions. And then kind of, when you say to yourself, okay, when I have my kids, this is how I'm going to do it. Well, guess what? Here you are, front and center. Now it's on you. So to me, obviously I travel a lot for a living. So my wife literally coached my sons in basketball and in soccer. And a lot of times the guys down the other end would go, "Who is this lady coaching these guys?" I said, don't mess with her. She'll coach circles around you because she's a whole lot more qualified than you are. So I was kind of like the good cop, like because I would go to the games and kind of stand in the corner like this and watch and be like the supportive dad. And my wife would be the one challenging them to D up, and or whatever in soccer or basketball, whatever it may be. So I think it's important in a relationship to try to have sometimes a good cop, bad cop. I think I think sports though, and Donovan can speak to this so well as well. I mean, sports. I've always said this: they not only build character, they reveal it. And I think what it does is it creates those moments in time where a lot of times we come up short and we fail. And I think the greatest lessons we can teach are when they have a setback or they witness a setback or another kid struggling. And, you teach them sacrifice and empathy and teamwork and respect. And discipline and all those types of things, and being able to honestly look in the mirror and say, am I giving my all? Am I giving my best? Am I a good teammate? Am I doing the things that I need to do? So I think so often the conversations you have are great character building opportunities. Yeah, sports, it could be hockey, baseball, soccer, basketball, whatever it may be, they're great. And I encourage every parent to have your child do something competitive because I think they learn a lot about themselves and they have a lot of different life experiences. But secondly, I think it really helps them develop self-esteem. It helps them develop that character, that toughness, that will to get through life's challenges. And to me, I'll never forget, I used to always say this to my players. The great Muhammad Ali said one time, he goes, I win my fights at 5 o'clock in the morning when I'm out running on a dark, deserted road and my opponent is laying in bed. So in the 13th, 14th, 15th round, I knew I had him. And, like teaching your kids that if you're going to succeed in life, you got to be willing to go the extra yard, the extra mile, whatever it may be. You got to be dedicated. You got to have great habits. You got to really want it. And I think sports, all those lessons that we learn from sports help build a young lady or a young man into someone that could get out there and handle all that life throws at them.
That's great. Donovan, please add. Thank you.
Yeah. So what Jack said, basically. Seriously, in my situation, when I think of sports, I think of family, right? And certainly in my family, all of the big times family would get together, it would be around sports. It would be around watching games, whether it was, Thanksgiving or Labor Day, you're watching football, Christmas, we're watching basketball, right? It was always around sport. And, in my relationship with my parents and even, my father, from a young kid, you see your parents get up and go to work every day, but you don't watch them work. But seeing them compete in sport, even if it was recreationally, I got a better understanding of, how they were teammates, how they resolved conflict. I got an impression on what their personality was and some of the traits that I wanted to also have. And then when you move forward into myself becoming an athlete in high school and in university, I learned a couple things about my family. One, because I was, in many ways raised by a village in terms of my family, that the entire family would come out, that everyone was excited for me to be able to compete. And when I was lucky to play in university, my grandparents who came here as immigrants with, grade 2 and 3 education from Jamaica, it was a big deal that their son through sport was on a university campus. It was a celebration. And so I remember playing in big stadiums, the only voice I would hear out of all that noise would be my mother's. No matter how many people were there, I could hear my mother cheering. And we talk about, and people put it in the locker room, dare to be great. Well, what does that mean? And for me, I knew that this was a celebration for me and my family that I was in that position, but also win, lose, or draw, if I played well or poorly, I could go to my family and the reception would be the same. Well, that frees you up to really dare to be great because you know you're going to be welcomed and you're going to be loved. And so I knew if that was the case for sport, that was going to be the case for any other aspect of my life, whether it was media, whether it was the way I choose to raise my family. So that's the bedrock of my relationship with sport and how I was raised. Now, when you transfer that into myself, raising my son, to be honest, covering sport has given me a great perspective on how I raised my son. I remember Steve Nash talking about the fact that his father, when they would get in car rides after games, they wouldn't talk about points, assists, or when he was playing soccer, goals. They would talk about how did you feel about how you played? What did you like that you did? What did you not like? Okay, well, what are the steps you're going to take to change what you didn't like? It wasn't about the outcome. It was about the process. And understanding that no matter what it is with my child, I don't want to be solely fixated on the outcome. I want to be a champion. If you turn that D into a C, I'm going to be just as excited if you put in the work, if you turn that A- into an A+. And so looking at some of the milestones that my son is starting to tackle, I want to be really, really excited for the process because I hopefully am building in some resiliency in him, that knowing that even if I'm knocked down, the process that I'm going through to achieve what I want is the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely, Jack, add, please.
Donovan makes some great points, and I just want to tag Donovan just on two quick things. To tag what Donovan said, the joy is in the journey, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like we're going through it right now. These are, I heard a song one time, these are the times to remember, for they will not last forever. You know, the joy is truly in the journey. And Donovan mentioned Steve Nash and his dad. There is no question. I think Donovan would agree with this because you mentioned the car ride. I think the best chats I've had with my three sons have been in the car. I call it shoulder-to-shoulder communication, where I say, hey, no electronics. I'm driving, no radio. And one of my sons, or maybe all three when they were little, it was chaos. But nonetheless, we're just all chatting and we're all looking ahead at the road. And, you know, a lot of times I know from my coaching experience, and I know when I played, I was a lousy player, but I remember it. You know, a lot of times you felt uncomfortable when they wanted the eye contact and, you know, firm handshake, eye contact. And I think sometimes boys feel pinned down when you say, hey, you got to look me in the eye and all that stuff. I think they're a lot more relaxed when you're in the car. I mean, I know when I was the head coach at Niagara, I was an assistant at Fordham as a college coach. A lot of times I would take one of my players for a ride, or I'd say, hey, you know what? I got to take my dog for a walk. Take a walk with me and we'll walk the dog together. And a lot of times they don't feel as pinned down and judged. And now they kind of, hey, how's school going? Or, you know, just thoughts about the game or what they experienced. And a lot of times kids will just open up because they're looking straight ahead and they don't feel like you're judging them and you're just going along. So to me, any way you can get them to open up is a really, really important thing. And when they open up, you got to be ready to really have your message to them that kind of sheds some light on how they can grow.
Excellent. Donovan, anything you want to add to what Jack has just shared?
Well, the thing about kind of letting them grow, I think is so smart because I think we forget that kids, no matter the age, they want to do well, right? Like it's natural as an instinct that, you know, you want the best for yourself. Oftentimes they just don't necessarily know how to get there and how to navigate it. And so if you are coming from a place where you're not instructing them, this is what you must do because I have more experience than you, but really say, no, you're self-interested in your own success. Let's have a conversation. Let's take the pressure away. What do you want in this life, which is yours? Okay, I'm listening to you. I'm hearing you. How can I help you get there? And ultimately, you're giving them much more autonomy to make decisions that are best for them because, again, they're self-interested. But more importantly, you're putting together foundation that when you're not there, whatever part of life, whether you're gone and not in this earth, or whether they've just grown up and they're having their own lives and making decisions every day about themselves, they have a foundation with which to process and make decisions that are going to be, you know, additive. So I think it's great that Jack was doing that, not just with his kids, but also he was doing the exact same thing with his players, and filling that void in their age and their thought process at that time.
Wonderful. I just want to ask Jack, when you were coaching, it almost seemed it was like a parenting situation with your players, was it not?
The thing I'm most proud of, and you can look it up on online. I mean, my coaching record wasn't great. That's why I'm in broadcasting now. I call it the greatest scam going. I mean, they put unemployed coaches on television. I've gone from being an idiot to an expert. It's the greatest scam going. It's white collar crime. But nonetheless, the thing I'm most proud of, though, is I had 100% graduation record. My 4 years as an assistant coach at Fordham University in the Bronx and my 10 years at Niagara University, all our guys graduated. And to me, something that was really cool that happened last year before the pandemic, two of my players came to our game in Atlanta when we played the Hawks. And they're both African-American guys. And I coached them, and they said, "Coach, we wouldn't miss hanging out with you for anything." They said to me, "You busted our you know what." And there were times I really got ticked off at you, but you insisted that I got my college degree. And one guy's from the Bronx and one guy's from DC. And they said to me, there were a lot of guys back home that was saying, "What are you wasting your time with all that for? You don't need to do that." And we sat down and we had a drink after the game before we charted out. And they were like, "Man, they're both doing really well." And they said, they were like, "Hey, man, we have our degrees. And you used to always say to us, these 4 years impact how we do the next 40. And, I started crying. And I'm not sure if you know this, but my wife and I adopted 3 African-American boys. So I feel a real connection to that. I feel a real pride to that. And, you look at what's going on in our society today. I think education's really, really important. And all that good stuff that Donovan was talking about. So when they go out there on their own, they're able to make it in a tough world. And so to sit with my former players, and that's what it's all about. Winning and losing comes and goes, but I can look in the mirror and say I didn't cheat them. I had their back. I had their best interests at heart. I told them what they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear, and that's tough love. And as we all know, sometimes you need conflict. Sometimes conflict there were moments that they didn't like me or didn't like what I was saying. And it's the same thing with your own kids. Sometimes you got to make a stand. Sometimes you got to have high standards and say, this is unacceptable. You're better than that. And I demand more of you. What's the old line? High achievement takes place in the area of high expectations. I expect better of you because you are better. You are talented. And I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I think you can be an absolute rock star or whatever you want to be. But I believe in you, and I am not giving in, and I am not caving. I believe in you. So that's the stuff that's really important to me. And you can look at my record and say I was a lousy coach. I probably was. But I'm damn proud of the fact that I can look at my players, and they know deep down I had their back. And I want to feel that same way as about a dad, that, yeah, there are going to be times where it gets rough and they don't agree with me. That's cool. I'm all right with that. But when they're raising their own families, they're going to be saying the same stupid stuff to them that I used to say to them.
All right. Good stuff. So before we move on to the next conversation piece, just want to share with everyone out there, especially to the fathers, play and sports is so important. So whether it's playing, coaching, or teaching your kids sports, some of the great things that come out of it: teach your kids effectively to play with others. It helps your children's communication skills. It builds emotional intelligence by learning to manage emotions. It also is a great way of just growing and developing with your child, and showing it also provides an area where you have a common interest with your child. So those are some of the great things. Now let's get to some fun. What are some of the challenges you have faced while teaching, coaching, and parenting your kids? And we're going to have Mr. Donovan, start with that one.
Wow. The challenges. My guy's still young, so we're just a week away from his second birthday. So the challenges are, I think has a future in hostage negotiation because everything is a negotiation, and he always wins, right? He breaks me down. He outwills me, no question.
Hostage negotiation.
I think one of the challenges is literally negotiating everything, screen time, how many bottles he's having relative to how much he's eating, what he's eating. That's a challenge. I mean, to be honest, I think one of the challenges, and we talked about, team and sport, is not even just managing my relationship with him, but my relationship with my wife through him. And so we're both former athletes. She was a student athlete as well. She was a goalie, an all-star goalie. And I was a football player as a running back, and our perspectives are different. I'm aggressive. Let's go. Let's be progressive. I want to push and move forward. She's defensive mindset. She's guarding his heart, guarding, his well-being. She's really with how we manage our son. How do we navigate some of those challenges and doing it for the first time? And every child is different, so there's really no exact handbook. And how do we look at my sensibilities and my upbringing with hers and mirror that to make what's the most sense for our individual child and be on the same page? So I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we've found in the first 2 years. Again, I think the second challenge that I have, and again, a lot of this comes from your upbringing, your family of origin, is, I mentioned it before. I'm from an immigrant family. My grandparents immigrated here from Jamaica. My parents immigrated here when they were young. My parents worked 2 and 3 jobs to give me and my brother a better opportunity at life, and we never would go wanting. And so the balance that I'm trying to proactively find, and he's 2, so I might be overthinking it at this point, is how do I, honor that legacy of sacrifice and make sure that I'm moving my family name in a better place and doing well, but at the same time honor what they've done and add all those great values of resiliency and ingenuity and hard work into my child. How do I balance those 2 things so that he doesn't have this cushy upbringing where he thinks everything is going to be given to him, but also that he does benefit from the sacrifices that the previous generations have made? So that's something that I'm constantly thinking about, constantly maybe too hyper aware of because he's 2, but thinking about that resiliency that he's going to need going into the world, whether it's sport, business, education, or quite frankly, being a racialized Canadian, is something that I constantly think about. So that's a challenge. But in terms of my interaction and my interpersonal conversations with him, the challenge is he's really good at getting me to do what he wants to do in the moment.
Okay. Well, I think this is one of the WWJD moments you just put in his lap. So he's on it. So WWJD, some fatherhood challenges and maybe some advice to Mr. D.
I don't know if I have that. Here's something that's, you brought some great stuff up there, Donovan, about you and your wife and how different you are. And I'll take it one step further. I'll never forget a guy named Father Vince O'Malley, who was our executive vice president in Niagara. And obviously he knew my wife, who was coaching there, and he knew me. When we adopted our 3 sons, he said to us, understand something. It's 50% nature and it's 50% nurture. He goes, but, and I demand of you, you have 100% control of nurture. Do your job and do it well. And I was like, wow, that's pretty strong stuff. He said, you have 3 adopted sons. They're gonna show personality characteristics sometimes that you're gonna go, that's not from me. That's not from my wife. Where's that coming from? Well, for kids that are biological, you could be in your own family. I'm dramatically different than my 3 older brothers. Donovan's son is dramatically different than him and his wife. It's an amazing thing maybe twins can be totally different in a family, you know? So it's, you know, Donovan mentioned the word resiliency. And I spoke last week for a high school. One of the things I said to the kids was, gentlemen, and it's an all boys high school. My sons went to the high school in Buffalo. And I said to them, I said, gentlemen, this is not about your comfort. This is about your character. And I think sports, I go back to what I said earlier, gets you out of comfortable. It makes you uncomfortable. And I think the uncomfortable builds your character. And to me, I think that's, you know, so you try to teach when the uncomfortable happens, and you try to humble them when they are comfortable, because I think the biggest two imposters there are success and failure. That when they think they're pretty good and they're a cocky 16-year-old, you got to do something to humble them a little bit, because they're smelling themselves right now, you know? And on the other hand, when the uncomfortable happens, that's where we swoop in and provide life lessons. And you know, Donovan was chatting about his family, which is a tremendous story. And I have a similar story. My parents are both off the boat from Ireland. They were farmers in Ireland and came over. Neither of them graduated high school. And my dad died when I was 7. So when you talk about fatherhood, for me, I didn't have a father growing up. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. My mom was a school lunch lady in Brooklyn, and my mom raised 4 boys. And you know, anytime I speak to kids, I always say this: my mom's my hero. So when I think about how I am as a dad, I think a lot of my shtick, my actions, come from my mom. My mom's 94. She lives in New York. I talked to her an hour ago. I talk to my mom every day. Wow. She's my hero. So I think we get inspiration from different people, but nonetheless, I don't know if I answered your question, Ed, or not.
No, it's all right. No, it's good. It's good. No,
I hope I tagged what Donovan said. I just think that you try as best as you can, as Donovan said, to kind of instill in your kid, and that could be your son, whatever, that you know, this is what our family's about. These are our values. This is what we stand for. And, you know, there's a level of expectation that we have for you, but we got your back the whole way, and we're going to unconditionally love you. There will be conditions, though, but nonetheless, it's unconditional. And so I don't know. I don't know if I made any sense there, but there I am.
You did. I want both of you to give your comments on 2 specific areas when it comes to raising children: patience and criticism. So, Donovan, you've got a 2-year-old and you're being hijacked. How do you handle patience and criticism with your 2-year-old?
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like you have my phone tapped and my house plugged.
No, it's Jack. Jack gives me the Cole's Notes version, right?
Yeah. So those words are operative because I have no patience for criticism from my mother on how I raise my child. So there's that. No, I mean, I think I'll say this: I am much more patient now than I was 2 years ago, before my child, before everything was about efficiency, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting as much work done as possible and getting to and from as possible. And now you got the built-in time, because life happens when you have a young kid, and they're not necessarily going at your speed all the time, and you need to be patient with them, and they're reading you, especially in this era, raising a young child, and the majority of his life has been in a pandemic, when most of the faces they see out in public are wearing masks. The facial expressions and the interactions that you have really matter, because it's the only real person they're getting some signals from on how they're doing. So I definitely have to, as my wife often says, fix your face to reinforce that I'm proud and that I'm willing to be patient as the food is going all over the place, and I'm thinking about how I just paid for that furniture, now it's ruined. definitely the patience it has increased, and I think in terms of criticism, you know, I in terms of talking to my child and correcting behavior, you know, I think it's the C word I would use is conversation, right? Because especially at the age that I'm at, they don't really understand, right? They don't really understand what they're doing is wrong or problematic. So really having conversations to explain, this is what you're doing, this is why you shouldn't do that, or this is why there's a better way to do that, or this is why this would be good if you do this. I'm having conversation because I forget that this little guy is learning the entire world rapidly before my eyes, which is cool, but I have to be that teacher and that instructor. And to do that takes a lot of patience as he's trying to fast track a bunch of knowledge. Or I'm looking at him like, this is so simple, dude. So definitely, you know, lots of patience, but I think lots of patient conversations, and that's the mode that the critiques have come. But certainly, I have become more patient with the critiques that my mother and grandmother have on my parenting style.
Good stuff, Jack.
And I've used this term a few times during the whole social justice issues that are you know, unfortunately, our society faces right now. And I've used this term because I think it's a really good one, and I learned it as a young coach. And it's this: rules without relationships equal rebellion. Rules with relationships equal respect and results. And I tagged what Donovan said, and Donovan used the word conversation. Well, we really need to have a better conversation on what's going on in our society. How do we do that? Well, we do that by actually not only hearing each other, but listening to each other and having relationships and having respect for each other and empathy and care and love for each other. And I think the same thing has to do with parenting or coaching or whatever, that, you know, having relationships with people and, you know, in what we do for a living, you know, being able, you know, in a non-pandemic world to say, hey, let's go have a beer, let's chat about this, or let's go have a cup of coffee, or let's take a walk, or sit in a room and chat about it, is important. And unfortunately, now we're not able to do that kind of stuff. But I think it's a big thing with your kid. And I go back to what I said before about the shoulder-to-shoulder communication, finding different ways and always thinking ahead of them. I'll never forget, I was at a coaching clinic when I was a young coach. Mike Krzyzewski said, a coach at Duke, change your meeting spots. You know, one day I'll talk to the team at half court. Another day I'll talk on the left baseline. Another time I'll talk down on the right baseline. Another day we'll go in the locker room. But the setting is never the same. And it's the same thing with your kids, is that can you find different ways to get them in a different setting and yet have a conversation and listen, not only hear, but listen. And again, there have been times I've succeeded. There's been times I've failed, but I've always tried. And I think that's the biggest thing, is trying and again, having that conversation. Go back to what Donovan said.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up on
absolutely.
that?
Please, Donovan, please.
Because I think what Jack said is so simple but so profound. And so I just want to make sure we double click on it. Rules without relationships equal rebellion. Rules with relationships equal respect and result. We're talking about, this forum is talking about how we parent, how we talk to our kids. But if we took that and applied that to our public policy,
everything,
to the political discourse that is so divisive, to our relationships, whether it's with our employer, with the people in our neighborhood, what a very more pleasant but simple way to go about life. So I just found it profound that the exact same methodology that we're talking about having and governing our households would work if we took that into our broader society at large.
Yeah. Can I just make one point?
Please do.
I always promise when I speak, if I can say one thing that resonates, I've done my job. If I say more than one thing, we've witnessed a miracle.
So miracles happen.
I got one. I'm doing okay. I'm trying for two now.
That's good stuff. Oh, that's fantastic. So we're going to move it on. Actually, I'm going to ask just get your quick insights on this. Apply, and especially for the fathers out there, showing that what you teach your kids and play in sports and adapting it to real life. If you could give some insight on that, both of you. Donovan, can you go first?
Yeah, certainly. I think sports is a great platform, a great, trial period to workshop through things that are going to apply to real life. Certainly the way I think, the way I problem solve, the way I communicate, the way I try to be a good teammate, both in my house and in my workforce, has to do with the lessons that I learned through sports. I mentioned the fact that my wife is also, a former high-level athlete. Engraved in our rings is the word teammates, right? Because, just from our experience in sports, we understood from a very young age, together, everyone achieves more. And so in our household, if we were thinking not individually, but collectively, what's best for this family unit, not what's best for me or what is, my spouse taking away from me, that'll change the perspective. And so I think sports is a great platform to workshop some of these things because, again, sports is, I would say, one of the last things where, it is, for the most part, about what you do, right? You can't bring your daddy's money on the field with you. You can't bring nepotism on the field with you. You have to produce, all right? And if you don't, you're letting other people on the field down. And I think applying some of the processes that we go through in sport to the workforce and to our lives broadly is a good thing. And I'll end by saying this, and this has been studied, that if you are a recruiting manager or a hiring manager, the hires that assimilate into the workforce the best, that show the most loyalty to the workforce, but also over time has the most upward mobility, time and time again, are former athletes at some level. So certainly there are traits baked in people who have had the pleasure of being in sport in some capacity that make them, efficient workers, productive workers. And I believe that those same traits make them great in their everyday lives as well.
Excellent. Jack?
Donovan just made a great point. That's why I put my thumb up. I remember back when I was an assistant coach at Fordham in the Bronx, and obviously we're in New York City, which is, high intensity, high competitive. And the term that we used to always use to our athletes, not just our basketball guys, but it was in our athletic department with our football team, our swimmers, our baseball players, softball players, tennis, whatever it was. Wall Street loves jocks because of all that stuff that Donovan just mentioned. You want people that are good teammates, that understand sacrifice, that have work ethic, that understand that it's not a 9-to-5 existence. You got to grind, you got to work. You're going to fail. You're not going to hang your head and not get back up. You're going to keep getting back. We're in the failure business, and so to me, I think it's a great thing. And, I always say when I speak to young people, I can't thank that orange ball enough. From the time I was 7 years old, dribbling a basketball, right-handed to the schoolyard, and then dribbling home left-handed and hanging out there and living my life growing up in a schoolyard. Here I am 51 years later, and that love affair with that ball has made me a man. The best friends I have in my life are because of sports. The best life lessons, both good life lessons and bad life lessons, were because of sports. I met my wife because of sports. I was able to adopt my kids and all that stuff. I mean, I've had 2 careers in it, but sport opened up a world for a kid that came from nothing in Brooklyn. I used to sleep in the on the same couch, a roll-out couch in the living room with my brother Brendan, and I came from nothing. And sport got me out and gave me an opportunity to be where I am today. And I can't thank that orange ball enough. And the experiences it gave me. And so to me, when a parent says to me, should I have my little Jane or Johnny, Julius play sport? I'm like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. It's a no-brainer.
And I think it's important, and I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the fact that it's really important for Julius and it's really important for Johnny. But quite frankly, it's probably more important for Jane. And there are many studies and metrics that show that whether it's self-esteem, in confidence, whether it is your own body image, that sport at a young age for women is so important in their growth, and really shows in terms of what they'll be able to accomplish in terms of not only their household but in the workforce, and giving them the confidence to really be advocates in the workforce. And one of my fears, certainly, is we're now in a pandemic that's lasted over a year, is that not only are many of our youth sports going away or being really difficult to bring back, but often the first sports at any level, never mind youth sports, that are cut are female sports, right? Because they don't bring in as much revenue, or just societally, they're deemed as not as important. No. And my fear is what is going to be sadly, the halo effect that we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now, when a lot of girls don't have youth sport. What's that going to mean for the indicators in their lives? And so with this conversation, I think because we are dads, and a lot of people just assume that as dads, we're talking about relationships with sons, we need to underscore the point that the relationship of giving sports to females is just as important. And the role as a girl dad is just as, if not more important as well.
Go ahead, Jack.
Obviously, Donovan, your wife obviously was a student athlete, and my wife was a two-time NCAA coach. So I think we both get it, in terms of advocating for young ladies, how important it is. And I was on a show last night, and they were asking about the great performances of our Montreal players in the Raptor Oklahoma City Thunder game the other night, and the growth of sport in Canada. And I talked about, where's the WNBA team in Canada? It's ridiculous that we don't have a WNBA team. And not only when we talk about the growth of men's basketball in Canada, which is the fastest growth sport in Canada, we need to talk about the growth of women's sport as well. So we both get it, and I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. I just want to add, I don't have as deep a history in sports as these two gentlemen. One of the things I realized in the limited coaching that I did is I always told my players, what you learn on the field is no different than what you learn in real life. You're going to have to play on a team. There's going to be some people you like, some people you don't like. And also, what happens when that object, whether it's a puck, ball, etc., comes to you? What do you do? How do you handle those situations? So especially with the younger people I had the opportunity to coach, I always said, don't separate what you're doing here from when you leave here. It's no different, just a different field, different environment. So just want to add it up there. So hope that added value to what's being shared here. As we're starting to wind down, because these gentlemen got lots of things to do, I want to see if we can get some best suggestions when it comes to, fathers utilizing sports as a method to build stronger bonds. So in both your experiences, past and present, how has sports, and also telling our fathers and those who love them, how can sports build stronger bonds between a father and their child or children? Donovan?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of examples. I think I'll say two things before we close. I think one, I really have to say, and Jack is really close to it, a debt of gratitude to the NBA and its players for how they've modeled publicly how cool it is to be a father, which is not something we've seen historically, specifically among African-American men. And it's not something we've seen in sport, right? If you want to be tough and intimidating, and whether it's LeBron James or Steph Curry, bringing Riley Curry to the press conference of LeBron, going crazy for dunks at his kid's high school game, or Dwayne Wade talking publicly about his children and transitioning and how he dealt with that. Or let's keep it local, Kyle Lowry, right? You can watch Kyle Lowry compete and get after it like a bulldog, and then walk off the court and give his kids a big hug and a big kiss, and show that level of compassion and love. So for me, before I was a parent, just to see that model and see that how cool it is to be an engaged father, I think is really important in terms of sport. The other thing I would say is, whether it's through sport or it's through life, I think it's important to remember, and I'm only 2 years in, that the relationship that you have with your child, God willing, is going to be one for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Like, in a way, that you're in it for the long game, right? You're running a marathon, not a sprint. So even though I am a father, I still have, luckily, a relationship with my father and my grandfather. And I'm still learning from them to this day things that I can apply to my child. And I'm still learning from them to this day things that I can apply in my life. And I've been blessed that, that village has expanded. And now I'm get to tap into the other side. And I'm learning from my father-in-law and from my uncles. So certainly I think it's important to remember that the relationship you're having with your child right now, no matter the age, that it again, if you're blessed to, it's going to continue to expand, but with that, it's going to continue to evolve. So those are the two things that I think it's important to keep in mind.
Jack?
Finish with two things as well. Number one, I think we're obsessed with success in sports. And I think in some ways that's bad, because we lose sight of just how cool the experience is, even when you fail. Because when you fail and then you do succeed, it tastes that much better. You need to get knocked down and have that feeling, because then when you get back up and you get it done, it's awesome. So the thing I've always tried to emphasize with my kids, and even in my prior life as a coach, was that there is a dramatic difference between being successful and being significant. And try to be significant. Try to take the experience that you have and be a better man, be a better lady, be a good friend. What do they say about a good friend? A good friend walks in when the rest of the world walks out. Have someone's back, be loyal, stand for something. Be yourself in a world that's trying to make you like everybody else every day, and fight that fight every day, and maintain your individuality. So to me, being significant. And I think when you play sports, and you're a young lady that plays sports, or a little boy that plays sports, this stuff really helps you grow and opens your world. And what's the old line? Sometimes you can see the stars, but you can't see the light. I think our job as parents is to help our kids see the light. And the last thing I'll say, it just happened this morning, actually. I run every day. Donovan was talking about marathons. I've done 7 marathons in my life. I've done a ton of half marathons, and I love to run. It's my way of just escaping, and I listen to music. And I'm able to get ready for games and all that way. But this morning, I'm out, I just got music on my phone, and I'm out running. And one of the songs that popped on my phone this morning, I don't know why it did, but it did. If you've ever heard the song by Cat Stevens, Cats in a Cradle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was Harry Chapin. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cats in a Cradle. That song makes me cry every time, because it talks about a father who's obsessed with his career. And his kid grows up along the way. And hey, look, as fathers, we have jobs, we have careers, and a lot of times those pressures, I'll never forget, I think it was Larry Brown. Years ago, I heard him coach at a coaching clinic, and he talked about acknowledged neglect. That, as coaches, we have to sacrifice a lot of times, that we miss our daughter's dance recital, and we miss our son's graduation because we have a game and we can't get out of it. And a lot of times your kids grow up so fast, and you're like, wait a minute, I was obsessed with my career, And, I didn't take the time. So I guess my last thing would be, just to say to fathers, job doesn't love you back. I love what I do for a living. Donovan, Ed, you guys love what you do for a living, but the job doesn't love me back. You know why? Because I was a college basketball coach. I got fired. And at some point in time, they'll tell me to hit the road, Jack. That's a song, I guess. But at some point, they'll tell me the same thing. And the job doesn't love me back. So when you've gone through tough times, who's there and has your back? Your wife, your kids, your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your dear friends. They're the ones that have your back. So as much as we are in pursuit of whatever it may be that we're in pursuit of, that little girl, that little boy, in the words of John Wooden, the little eyes upon you. Those little eyes are upon you every day. And I go back to what Father O'Malley said to me. It's 50% nature and 50% nurture. You got 100% control over nurture. Do your job.
Wow. Wow. Powerful. Gentlemen, we got time for one quick question. And the question is, parenting differences and varying perspectives can be challenging. What are your perspectives on ways to work well with their partner when it comes to raising kids?
Go ahead, Donovan.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me and my wife, it's conversation, and she is the Greg Popovich of sleep training, right? Every study she has read, every sleep training influencer she has followed, so she knows what she's doing. So sometimes I know, listen, all right, I'm coachable. You just tell me what to do. I'm with it. But there's other things where I'll have more of an opinion, and it's more of a conversation. So I think understanding that there's going to be a give and take. There are going to be times where it's not going to be 50-50. And I'm going to have to lean in and do 60 or 75 because she's, a working mom from home. And there's other times when, the needs of the child are going to want mom more, and I need to play more of a supportive role. So having a constant dialogue and conversation and checking in to make sure, I don't just see you as the parent of my child. I also see you as my partner. How am I supporting you in this endeavor? Because it is very difficult, especially during a pandemic. Remembering that, we're not just teammates in raising this person, you're teammates in sharing a life. I think is the biggest thing in terms of balancing, that partner relationship in terms of child rearing.
Jack?
Donovan, I would say, honey, yes, you're right. You're always right. I mean, number one, that you need to use that sometimes. I would say every guy listening would agree with me on that one. There are times.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
What would Jack do?
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's the new website.
Sometimes you just got to go, I give up. I surrender. Okay, whatever. But I think Donovan used the word that's the most important one, and that's partnership. And you have to. They're your partner, and there are a lot of situations, as we know, that families are apart. But nonetheless, there's still partner in that word. Part. I mean, you're still part of each other's lives, and that little girl, that little boy, is part of both of your lives. So partnership, being able to communicate, and it's not always going to be smooth. There's going to be disagreements. But I think partnership is the word. The other thing, it just came to me, and I apologize. Years ago, I used to do a radio show on the Fan 590, and I had Walter Gretzky on, Wayne's dad, and he made a really cool point. And this is nothing. It's something to do with fatherhood, but maybe he said, I tell you what, I love the fact that Wayne used to play baseball. The hockey season would end, he'd put his skates and stick away, and he played baseball all summer. And my son didn't play hockey again until the fall. And he said it made him a more well-rounded kid. He had different coaches, different teammates, different life experiences. And even though this maybe isn't necessarily like a father-son thing, a father-daughter thing, I think what we're doing today with young athletes is we're asking them to specialize way too early in life. And I think it's an important thing to have your kids play as many sports as possible, have as many coaches as possible, have as many teammates as possible, and most importantly, as many life lessons, good and bad, that'll shape them. And it's funny, I've talked to a lot of our players in my 23 years with the Raptors. I'll never forget, I used to love talking baseball with Del Curry and Tracy McGrady. Those guys love baseball, and like to be able to have, I love talking football with Kyle Lowry, and it's remarkable talking tennis with Pascal Siakam, and they all have different interests, but I think it makes you more well-rounded as a young lady, young man.
Wonderful. So before we close out, a few quick things. One thing I definitely wanted to share with everybody, where there is a contest that Dove Men Care is running. So in order to celebrate dads who #take the time to bond with their children, Dove Men Care has partnered with the Toronto Raptors to launch a contest for families to win more opportunities to connect over sports. So all you need to do is submit your story through the Toronto Raptors app for a chance to win Raptors and Dove Men Care prize packs. So if you go to the Toronto Raptors app, you'll get the information how you can potentially win some prize packs in collaboration with Dove Men Care and the Toronto Raptors. Before we close out, I'd like to thank, first of all, everybody who watched this conversation. It was better than I thought. And to use a sports analogy, they hit it out of the park, big time, both of them. I want to say thank you to Donovan and Jack for everything they have done, are doing, and will be doing. More importantly, as fathers, but also personally and professionally, we from Dad Central, thank you so much. And we just wish blessings to you and your family in your continuous endeavors. I want to say a big shout out to Dove Men Care. Thank you for the continued collaboration and knowing how important how fathers are in our lives. And finally, to the audience, thanks for taking the time. So we look forward to seeing you in future conversations. Also, if you have any questions or any more information when it comes to fatherhood, go to the website dadcentral.ca. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody. And most importantly, during these times, stay safe. Donovan, Jack, thank you so much and stay blessed. Take care.